Welcome to We Question and Learn. This is Tom Pysz. We're celebrating our 16th year. Yes, Brian, you can last in public broadcasting for more than a few years. We have two special guests. First, we'll introduce our prime and most important guest. Sorry, Brian. Daniel Meyer, music director of the Erie Philharmonic. And we're just so happy you came up the hill.
Thank you, Tom.
Because on the day of this recording, and this will be on the air early December, you had to cross a lot of slippery streets to get here. Right?
You know what? It looks very much like December outside, so it's appropriate that this will air.
And this is our first Sunday of December program. And Daniel, thank you so much for braving the cold to be up at WQLN. And a special guest who came from down the hall.
From the next room.
From the next, Brian Hanna, who interrupted his well-planned broadcast through the magic of technology and is able to sit with us and add to the content of the program. So we're already a couple of months into the season, right? How's it going, Daniel?
It's going very, very well. And you have to remember, we have been angling for and hoping for and expecting this amazing renovation of the Warner Theater. And virtually every season we've planned for the past 3 or 4 years has been mega blast, most amazing classical music that you could ever hear, because we are thinking, well, this will be our last year in the Warner Theater before we have to live through a year of renovation. And now we finally are at that juncture. So we are planning yet another amazing season for next year to carry us through. But essentially, why not? I mean, we have 5 symphonic programs, 5 pops programs, and then, of course, we perform concerts all over northwestern Pennsylvania. But at the end of the day, our job is to put on something that people will resonate with and will be excited by and changed by the opportunity to hear this orchestra. And frankly, in a very selfish way, I'm trying to put together programs that I like to conduct. I'm really looking forward to the next opportunity that I get to stand in front of this orchestra, because I know what they're capable of. I think I know what they're capable of. And I hope that I just don't get in the way.
Well, for people who are tuning in across the country, how many years has it been for you here?
I think this is my 12th season with the Erie
Isn't
Philharmonic.
that wonderful?
Which is,
I think, isn't that a world's record for Erie?
I don't know if it's a world's record, but it's funny because I try not to look backwards all that much. So when I say 12, it's a shock to me as well, because I still feel like we're building. There's a vital aspect to the music making that we do, and there's a vital aspect to essentially promoting great art and great music in our community. I think it takes a lot of energy, a lot of money, and a lot of people donating a lot of their time and their energy to make this work. And it's a run that I'm very happy to run and to continue to run.
Fabulous what you do.
Well,
and your musicians.
I believe I played your very first official concert, which was at the Bayfront in the amphitheater on the Bayfront. It was the Pepsi Amphitheater at the time, I think is what they called it. Yeah. That was your very first official concert?
I think I jumped off a boat in a wetsuit.
Right. That's
I'm
exactly
not kidding.
what
I
happened.
actually did. Well, I didn't.
Well,
I thought you were
you don't have to give away the magic.
You don't have to reveal the magic.
But that was 12 years ago. You were a 12-year-old kid just starting with your first big orchestra performance here in Erie, Pennsylvania, and everybody was just amazed by your first performance, and it shows because they've kept you for 12 years, which is really exciting. They've made you part of the Erie family, which is really nice.
Well, it's funny. I think in my 5th year with the orchestra, I had an interview, and he said, "How many years have you been here?" And I said 5, and he said, "Oh, you're good."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you make
and that
it over
just made me laugh. It was kind of a hump that I needed to get over.
Really? Is there tenure in the classical music business?
It's really all over the map, frankly. I mean, you'll find some music directors spend virtually their entire careers with an orchestra. If you look at Franz Welser-Möst in Cleveland, he just re-upped through another 4 or 5 years. I mean, he has had perhaps one of the lengthiest music directorships with a major orchestra. And then there are some communities that hire somebody for 2 or 3 years. Maybe they need to re-energize, or they need somebody to get them over a hump, or they're just looking for a personality that then buys them more time, frankly, to look for another music director. So there are a lot of different ways that orchestras look for leadership. But in my opinion, it takes a long time to build a relationship and to build a sense of ensemble and to connect with a community.
This program will air December 1st. With that comment you made, what's the talent pool for folks that do what you do? Is this diminishing overall, or are they clamoring to?
I think there will always be people that want to stand in front of an orchestra and wave their arms. I mean,
it's more than that.
No, but I mean, but you have to be seduced by that initial moment. You have to sit in a concert hall and say, oh, wow, that looks like an enormous amount of fun. I want to do that.
Oh, and there's been television programs where they put amateurs up there, some of which have done pretty well, but it's more complex than waving your arms for us neophytes.
True enough, but I think you have to have that superficial excitement about the sheer attractiveness of leading a group of 100 people who are experts at what they do. I mean, I try to think of other CEOs or other bosses who have the advantage that I have, which is I get to work with a workforce that have spent their entire lives honing the craft that they work on. And I mean, they were 5 or 6 years old when they started taking their instruments. They were very carefully and judiciously brought along in an entire set of rudiments and learning technique and learning the basics of music, learning the language of music, and then essentially competing against each other for spots in these orchestras and in these ensembles. And if you think about the Erie Philharmonic, you're looking at some of the finest musicians in the United States that get past that.
How did you start?
Well, I think it started with just singing along with my mom at the piano. I mean, there are pictures of me in diapers sitting right next to her, and she would sing songs and let me plunk along on the piano and sing along with her. So just the love of music and making music normal in our family was the most important first step. And then I took piano lessons from kindergarten, and the glory days in the public schools when in 3rd grade you could march down to a room and pick up a stringed instrument. And I said, Mom, I want to take the violin. And so I started violin in 3rd grade through the public schools, and then within a couple years started taking private lessons. And then singing has always been a part of my life, vocalizing. I still sing in front of the orchestra. I mean, it's really the quickest means to communicate what I want with the musicians is to sing how I think a particular phrase should go.
During a performance, or is it just in?
Well, I can tell you a story.
Yes, because I remember you vocalize sometimes.
I do sometimes. I grunt sometimes. I sometimes I don't even know I'm doing it. I remember sitting in the lawn at Tanglewood one summer when I was a student, and Seiji Ozawa was conducting Beethoven's 7th Symphony. And there are microphones that pick up the orchestra, and there's some that, of course, positioned right near the conductor. And I swear to you, all I heard in that first movement was he was vocalizing the rhythm internally, and it was becoming external and being picked up on the microphones. And all I could hear was this grunt along with the
Lenny
along with the music making.
Bernstein. You hear occasionally you'll hear a as he's conducting something that in a nice recording. The great Glenn Gould sang along with practically everything he ever played.
Yeah. Well, Edgar Meyer just came and performed with us, and if you listen to his commercial recording of his bass concerto, you can literally hear him you can hear him counting out the beats to his own concerto, which just makes me smile because it means, he wrote a piece that was even hard for him to play.
Right. Well, also, Tom, you mentioned you don't just get up there and wave your arms around. It's so much more than that. Of course, it's making your own interpretations of the pieces of music or following closely to somebody else's interpretation. There's a reason why there's 85 different recordings of the Beethoven 9 in our music library here, because each conductor puts his own spin on it to a certain degree. Do you like to put your own spin on music? Do you like to listen back to old recordings of great conductors and try to use their interpretations? And what kind of research do you put into preparing a great piece of music that maybe you haven't done before? I mean, the Pines of Rome, who hasn't recorded Pines of Rome? Right. So when you're coming with a fresh performance of Pines of Rome, there's an expectation that the audience expects to hear something they're familiar with. How much leeway does that give you to play with it, make it Daniel Meyer's own interpretation?
Well, there are a couple aspects to an interpretation. One is just the sheer technicalities related to that ensemble in that space and in that time period, which is to say we are in a kind of a glory era of a very highly trained and highly skilled workforce, which is to say everyone on that stage is an expert at his or her instruments. There really isn't a whole lot of struggling going on to render the notes. So you're living in that situation. Number two, you're living in a specific acoustic. The Warner Theater is an old movie house that has been retrofit into a concert hall. I have to take that into account in the decisions that I make regarding tempos or speed at which the music is performed, or the degree to which the sound reverberates. For instance, if I were to conduct a piece in a big cathedral with a wide or a long reverberation, I would adjust my decisions there versus what I would do in the Warner Theater. Thirdly, and perhaps the most important, is what do I think the composer's trying to say with the music? What is this art signifying, or what is it trying to say? Or is it music about music? I have to make all of those decisions, and that's a much lengthier process. That comes from the initial excitement of, oh, what is that piece? Oh, it's the Pines of Rome. Ooh, I hope I get a chance to conduct that someday. To, oh, here's the Pines of Rome. Oh, let's take a look at the score. Let's see what the forces are, what the technical difficulties are. Is this really right for the Erie Philharmonic for this particular concert or this particular juncture in their history? And then, is it right for me? Is it a piece that resonates with me? Is there something that I feel like I can say about this piece or bring to life that may or may not have been brought to life before for these musicians? So for me, unlocking all of these things and revealing all of these things, unfortunately, happens mostly out of the public eye. It happens at my study and at my desk, 1.5 years before the performance even happens, and then the weeks leading up to, and then in those wonderful but very pressure-laden few rehearsals that are leading up to the actual performance. And then there's the ecstasy that everybody gets to experience in the concert hall, and that we finally get to share these years of cumulative knowledge and work and a meeting of the minds, if you will, about how the music should be rendered. So it's a multi-layered experience, and one that's enormously gratifying. But it's interesting that you talk about, well, there are 85 recordings of Beethoven's Fifth or Brahms's Fourth. That's fascinating, and it would be not wise of me to ignore those. There's a lot for me to learn from the mistakes or the successes that other practitioners have had with that particular piece. So it makes a lot of sense for me to listen to Loren Maazel's recording with the Cleveland Orchestra, even if I know that I don't have the Cleveland Orchestra in front of me, because there are certain things that he solved with that piece that may help me inform how I might solve those difficulties or those problems or those questions that just need to be answered with my own ensemble. And sometimes it's fun to listen to a crummy recording. Just because you know right off the bat what's really difficult for the orchestra, what's going to be is going to take a little extra time in rehearsals, and I can't believe he or she did that with that particular phrase. I have a very different idea about that, and I can actually solve or pre-solve a lot of those issues before I even get in front of the orchestra, because it behooves me to do so.
And if you just look at the length of some of these recordings, you can tell how varied the interpretations can be just looking at the times markings, because you'll see recordings that are 27 minutes versus 22 minutes. How did that conductor make up a 5-minute gap in that?
And I'll tell you a little secret about that too. Sometimes that's related to the era in which those pieces were recorded, because if you think about it, back in the day of 78,
you had to fit it on an LP.
That's right. You have to fit the music onto a particular, a side or flip over to the other side for the other two movements. So some interpretive decisions were made in those eras just for the sheer practicality of fitting it all on a piece of vinyl that could be packaged and set out. Right. So you have to be careful. And you also have to think, and you have to know a little bit about music history to know, well, Mozart put repeat signs around this probably because it was designed for a party situation, or he needed to fill up time, and he told the musicians, hey, we're not going to need to take this repeat tonight because of such and so, or there may be other pieces on the program. Or we say, go ahead, repeat this again, to fill out a particular length, just for the sheer practicality of keeping people warm in a ballroom.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And so, these are all issues that play into how long pieces last. But as you say, it's also exciting and endlessly fascinating to hear essentially how quickly different conductors' hearts tick. And how quick their pulse is, because some pieces work brilliantly at a fast speed, and they work just as brilliantly at a snail's pace.
And how much do you have to prepare yourself for that going into a concert? Because you're doing the Overture to Candide. You're excited. Yeah. You're in front of an audience of 3,000 people. You get up on stage. You've rehearsed it comfortably with just your friends on the stage. Now you're in front of 3,000 people. The adrenaline's going a little bit. What does it take to rein that back in and not just jump into it at full speed? And do you ever start something and then catch yourself 30 seconds into it going, oh boy?
Yeah, but then I think your bet is made. So I learned a pretty valuable lesson when I watched my boss in Pittsburgh, Morris Janssens. And in dress rehearsals, they were the most boring performances I think I'd ever witnessed. And he barely moved a muscle. He really only moved his hands enough to get things started, stopped, move them along, show more or less the pacing that he was going to use that night. And I asked my friend, I said, what is going on here? I mean, how is this concert ever going to have any kind of life to it? And he said, just hang on, wait. And he was very conscious about, A, preserving the energy level of the musicians, because often dress rehearsals happen on the same day as the first night's performance. And B, he wanted some degree of uncertainty still baked into the cake. In other words, when the performance came that night, there still needed to be some decisions made that surprised the musicians or was different from what they were expecting. And part of that was the magic of investing that performance with energy and life and an unexpected element that made everything just kind of explode. And as an interpreter and as a concert conductor, I mean, there are very few that have a peer to Morris Janssens to that degree. And a lot of it, I think, is owed to this very clinical, very staid, very careful, very energy-preserving dress rehearsal that then parlays itself into an explosive performance that night. And I'm not always capable of reining it in. Yeah, right. That's something that I think it will take a lifetime to master, but I think that's something that he just had in spades.
You mentioned you go 2-3 years out. What does the orchestra contribute to the selection or to the concert? Or are they at your beck and call, so to speak?
Well, the two aspects of my job are the impresario and the programmer. So I need to help choose the guest artists that come to Erie. I also need to choose the program, the pieces that we're going to play.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, I'm the one that stands up in front of the orchestra and says, this is how I think we should perform these pieces. Yeah. So in the music director hat or the planning stages, I have to be very careful to think, oh, well, if we're performing Tchaikovsky in January, then I need to balance our diet with a little bit of Beethoven in March. Or if the chorus is being used for this concert, we have to give them a couple months off so that they have an opportunity to regain strength and energy and learn the next program. So there really is a lot of, it's a bit of a shell game, it's a little bit of a puzzle, it's a little bit of taking all the constituent pieces and trying to shape a season that is exciting over a wide span from September through June or whatever it would be. And each concert in and of itself has an interest, has an excitement, has a flow, has a through line of some degree. And it's related to how you put these disparate pieces together on a program.
Over a period of time, what input does the audience have? Because you're planning well in advance. Yeah. And the market dictates sometimes what you do, maybe?
No, you're absolutely right. And I would say that's more on the pops side than on the classical side.
Okay.
On the pop side, we try to stay current. We try to keep up with whatever music is popular in the day, and that's why we tend to wait a little bit later and hedge our bets a bit when it comes to programming on the pops series. But on the classical series, we know what the pieces are. We know the composers that people love. We know the composers that our musicians are trained to perform to the best of their ability. Okay. So that informs the staple of the diet, and then we start to add interesting elements as we move along.
Mr. Hanna has to disappear and go back to his radio studio where we sequester him to play CDs of all things. Come on. He is not honored with an orchestra as you are. And while we have our last 10 minutes here, you've gone through some of this season, but December 7th is sneaking up, and there's a wonderful... Tell us about the season upcoming.
Well, there's a through line to the last 3 years and this current season, which is to say we've been celebrating the life of Ludwig van Beethoven. And everyone on the planet who has an orchestra or an ensemble or a string quartet or performing arts series is saying happy birthday to Beethoven this coming year because we're celebrating his 250th. So we have spent the past 3 years in some degree of a retrospective playing the great concerted works of Beethoven, the concertos, the overtures, the symphonies. And so we just performed Leonore Overture Number 3 from his opera, or was designed for his opera Fidelio. We'll be performing the Ninth Symphony, which is the great Ode to Joy Symphony, which involves a huge chorus and a quartet of operatic soloists to finish our season. So that's been a through line for us, and that's not hard to do because we already love the music of Beethoven, and there's so many challenges that are kind of part and parcel of bringing that music to life. I've also had a little sub-theme this season of American music and American composers and American performers. In fact, the entire program in January is dedicated to great American composers and performers. Aaron Copland, music from our town, which I think a lot of people don't know. They know the Thornton Wilder play, of course, but maybe they don't know that Aaron Copland wrote some beautiful and poignant incidental music to go with it. Leonard Bernstein's West Side Story. Of course, everyone knows the musical, or at least knows a few tunes from the musical, but maybe they didn't know that he took all the music from it and fashioned it into a full symphonic suite. So we'll be performing that as well. Howard Hanson, not a very well-known American composer, but an important figure in the previous century in American musical history, and was also closely associated with the Eastman School of Music, wrote a little compact symphony number 5 called Sinfonia Sacra, which I think is so powerful and makes such a big impact that I wanted to include that music in the mix so that people understood that there were still people writing tonal music and listenable music in the era of the atonal music and the 12-tone composers. And then we're also part of a co-commission. Michael Torkey, one of the most highly regarded American composers today, wrote a brand new violin concerto for Tessa Lark. And Tessa is capable of just about anything. And he thought, well, why don't we do something with a little bit of an authentic American tinge to it? So he included some real bluegrass elements into this concerto, and we're among the first orchestras to ever perform this work because we were part of the co-commissioners. And co-commissioning just means that we were part of sponsoring it and helping pay for the commission and paying for the composition of the piece. So we get the honor of being one of the first orchestras to actually perform it. So it's exciting to be part of that. I think that's important for us to be involved in, and I also think it's important for us to play music of our country, of our nation, of our composers, because the good news is that there are still composers alive and well and writing very listenable music. They care about what audiences think about their music. They want to write music that resonates with people, and I think that's really important. And I mean, I'm just looking here. I mean, we're doing a full-length feature of one of the most iconic American films from the previous century in Steven Spielberg's E.T., The Extraterrestrial.
Now, that encourages people to bring their children, right? Isn't that something you're working towards?
Of
Having
course.
young people?
I mean, I want the concert hall to be a place where everyone feels comfortable. Yeah. I don't want people to think, oh, well, what do I need to wear, or how do I behave, or when do I clap? We don't care about that. Yeah. We care that you come and that what we're playing on stage resonates with you in some way. And what's so great about E.T. is that it's a story that's just so touching and that everyone can resonate with. But it has this incredible score by one of the finest composers of the previous century and this century, John Williams. I mean, that score to E.T. Let him flex his outer space muscles a bit. You know, write music that, I mean, how do you write music about moons and stars and satellites and asteroids and flying saucers? Yeah. He has this incredible imagination, and he's able to transfer it to the entire orchestra. And I think to watch the feature film on a huge screen and hear the Erie Philharmonic play it live and bring that soundtrack to life is an experience that you can't get anywhere else.
And that's a trend now, right?
It
you
is.
never used to see something else in the media or from the media or multimedia.
Well, if you think about it,
Engaging
most of
the
these
audience.
most of these film scores were put together in segments. So if a film composer and orchestra is playing a soundtrack, they might be doing a 15-second, 30-second, 45-second bit, and then they perfect it and then move on to the next thing. And then it's up to the editors to stitch it all together later.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you can imagine 2 hours of a very taxing and a very athletic musical score that then the orchestra has to play in real time in perfect synchronization with the film.
Yeah.
I think we're now at the part in music history where orchestras can actually pull that off.
It's fair. We have a couple of minutes left. Now, where do you see the film in 5 years? Where it is? You're 2 years out, I think, maybe 3.
Right.
Can I get a preview of what you're thinking about, or is it still a work in progress?
Well, it's always a work in progress.
Yeah.
But this community will hear this orchestra like they've never heard it before. One, because we just keep getting better.
Yes.
But two, as a function of the renovation and the acoustic improvement of the Warner Theater,
Yes.
you'll hear things from the orchestra that you probably have never heard before. And my hope is that it will be so well tuned to the space. And I know it can work because I actually worked for an orchestra that played in a very similar space.
You and I talked a couple of years back about Kleinhans, as
Yeah.
we call in Buffalo, where the resonance was just supernatural.
Right.
You're working on that now.
That's right.
Yeah.
The idea is to create a space for the orchestra and get a shell around the orchestra that completely collects the sound we make and A, make it easier for the orchestra to hear each other, but B, get that wonderful collection of sound beautifully distributed and pushed out into the space in which
10-second
the
question.
audience
Will that
sits.
include technology to record you?
I
Will you
I certainly
become
hope
an
so.
internet,
I think that's part of the future is to
Okay.
is to let the rest of the world know what a treasure we have here and what we're doing here in Erie is important and exciting.
Well, you are a treasure, and I'm allowed to say that. I'm the host of the program. But secondly, we're very grateful for what you do as music director for the Erie Philharmonic. I think I speak for the community. You're a joy and a pleasure, and you're a community treasure for all of us listening on WQLN, but in the entire Northwest Pennsylvania and the world.
Well, you're kind to say so,
Yeah,
but
no, it's true.
thank you.
It's true. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
That's my pleasure, Tom.
Thank you.
I'm Michelle Martin. These days, it seems like just about everybody is choosing sides and doubling down on talking points. Here at NPR, we try to cut through the noise with meaningful and respectful discussions with people from all perspectives, backgrounds, and walks of life. Join the conversation every weekend on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Saturday and Sunday afternoons at 5 on WQLN Radio.
Hi, this is Jeff Hanley, host of Jazz Happening Now. Each week we listen to some of the latest jazz recordings, and I think you'll be thrilled by what today's jazz musicians are doing and saying. The recording industry has changed, but the music is as alive and as vibrant as ever. The future of jazz is happening right now, if you just listen. And please do.
Sunday night at 6 on WQLN Radio.
Welcome to We Question and Learn. Today, Gerry Schneggenburger from the Northwest Industrial Resource Center. Welcome to WQLN.
Thank you, Tom.
Welcome back, because I think it's been 5 years since, or 4.
Yeah, been a while.
Yeah.
There's been a few times. I think when I was at Penn State Barron as tech transfer manager. I was
Oh,
here
that's right,
To
yeah.
talk about all the good things we were doing.
We're thrilled to have you. You are the Chief Operating Officer.
Yeah.
And you work with Bob Zaruda, who's the president and CEO.
Yes.
So let's just define the organization itself, the Northwest Industrial Research Center. What is it? First, there's folks who probably don't understand all the good things you do.
Great. It's a nonprofit, public-private partnership. There are roughly 60 centers around the country. We just have one of them in Little Northwest Pennsylvania. And we serve 13 counties, all the way out to St. Mary's, down to Clarion and Mercer, and up here in Erie and Warren and Bradford. And believe it or not, Tom, we have about 1,400 manufacturers that we serve. It's more than you would think. And a lot of those are service organizations that belong in supply chains. So just like the Department of Commerce has agricultural extension partnership offices. You'll see one up in Northeast that's run by Penn State. They help grape farmers and farmers understand different issues in farming. We do the same thing for the U.S. Department of Commerce. We help manufacturers with new tactics, new technologies, and new methods.
The big picture then is you are an independent nonprofit organization stretching across the country, right?
Well, our program is run through NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, which is a wholly owned and funded subsidiary of the U.S. Department of Commerce.
Now, those are the folks that do all the measurement and keep the clocks?
And protocols and standards. So ISO 9001, for example, was started there. Many standards are started there. There's something called ISO. Oh, actually, no, it's called NIST 800-171.
NIST?
NIST 800-171. That will become an international standard.
I remember ISO 1000 or whatever that was called way
ISO
back.
9000.
9000.
Yeah. And then remember the Malcolm Baldrige Award?
Yeah.
Remember some of these manufacturers actually went bankrupt trying to comply with all the standards back in the 1980s. So we were started in the 1980s. The Japanese back in the day were really taking some of our methods around Six Sigma and lean manufacturing tactics and doing it one better than us, and their profitability and their marketability was outshining ours. So our
GE was a big Six Sigma.
Oh, Six Sigma,
Huge.
lean, continuous improvement.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, just-in-time manufacturing.
Yeah.
Boy,
you're bringing back memories. That was huge back then.
Yeah. So we've been around for 30 plus years,
Okay.
and we always seem to be pushing the envelope. So if the scientists in the labs and the folks in the university setting come across a good idea, our jobs are to move those ideas into the 30, 50, 100-person shops in our territory.
Okay, that's not easy. I guess you have 1,400 folks organizations you service, but there's many more than that, right? Am I mistaken?
In the region.
In your region.
Oh my gosh, the SBDC, the Ben Franklin, so many of our partners are serving different markets. Our market solely is the manufacturing market. And frankly, our purview is more the 500 employee and less. We don't really serve manufacturers, the DuPonts, the IBMs, the GEs of the world, frankly, probably have the resources to underwrite and fund and assist themselves.
Well, those are the bread and butter companies in our country now, aren't they, when you really think about it?
The big corporations?
No, the
small ones.
Hundreds of thousands of mom, pa, up to 50 employee or 100 employee shops.
Absolutely.
They run the country, so to speak.
I think they always ran the country.
Yeah.
When you think about the heritage of Erie, where did Erie Insurance come from?
Yeah,
A
one
two-person.
guy.
Yeah, well, two guys in a shop.
Yeah.
If you look at Hammermill Papers, if you look at Steris and American Sterilizer, Erie's Magnetics, they were all 1, 2-person, 3-person shops. The Pysz over at the
Out of garages, too, sometimes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And so I think we're just understanding the destructive nature of the startup and the small entrepreneur versus the big entities. And the downsizing of the big corporations is spectacular, but nobody understands or comprehends the small businesses, of which will start up, and half of them will not be in existence in 10 years' time. But one of out of those 10 will probably flourish and grow up to be the next Erie's Magnetics or the next Lord Corporation.
So how many folks do you have? I have a printed list. I'm not going to read all of these off, but there's a dozen people here. No.
Yeah, nearly a dozen. We're
nearly a
minus
dozen.
1, 11. Yeah.
Close enough.
Yeah.
And your territory, once again, I see you have a Meadville office, a Du Bois office.
Yeah.
That's about the farthest you go, maybe?
Yeah, our Du Bois person goes all the way over to St. Mary's in Elk County.
All right, and that is an historical area as well.
Oh, yeah.
Your powdered metal industry. Is that still prevalent in that area?
How did you know? Not a lot of people know that.
Usually
I know that stuff.
I looked your footprint, and I was in the corporate insurance world, and we went to all these and worked with a lot of these guys. And that's a fascinating industry, as you know, came from Germany.
Yeah.
After World War II. And
I think I should be interviewing you.
Yeah. Well, and they we won't. We'll go into that story.
No,
how powder metals got to the United
powder
States.
metal is a big deal.
We caused it in attacking Germany.
Yeah.
We really did, because they couldn't put smokestacks up because we would bomb them. So they figured out how to take scrap metal and grind it into powder and do casting underground.
Yeah,
right?
that's a huge industry.
And all those wonderful folks who invented that came here. A lot of them came here to central Pennsylvania, St. Mary's.
Yeah, that's right.
And central PA.
Yeah, it's a huge.
So you know all about powdered metals.
Well, if they could just get some employees out there and workers.
It's a beautiful place to live.
It's
Come on.
a great place. Well, we got to get our young people to stay there and to grow. So we have such a rural footprint. 11 of our 13 counties are considered rural by the USDA.
Oh, really?
And one of the things that we struggle with is, getting skilled laborers and people to live there. And we're doing a fair job on that. And then, of course, sometimes you work around the fact that there's a gap, and you do that through automation. We're working with many organizations on visual inspection
So
systems.
your organization
robotics.
is a knowledge base.
It's more than a knowledge base. It's applied knowledge and applied engineering.
Okay.
Yeah,
so your people are totally experienced in communicating. Obviously, you know what you're talking about. For obvious reasons, you have to.
Well, we're connectors, so we know what the universities offer. We know those fledgling 2 and 3 person operations. There are operations and consultants who are experts in certain domains in engineering and design spaces. And a lot of those small consultants don't have the opportunity to knock on the doors of the 13 or 1,400 manufacturers that we serve. So we do that for them. And so sometimes when we're making referrals and setting up projects with universities or collegiate resources, sometimes it's with small consultants. Sometimes our consultants that we partner with are multi-state and regional. For example, we work in cybersecurity, and we work with an expert in Western New York, and we also have one in Cleveland. And they could do things that, frankly, some of our local providers don't
So
have
these
the
are
opportunity.
independent consultants, would you
Yeah,
say? They're in business, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're in business.
Yeah.
And you are a connector.
We are connected. Not only do we connect and solve problems, and frankly, if you're an operations person or an engineer at a manufacturer and you're struggling with problems, you may not have gotten out of your own building or gotten out of your own space to know what the resources are available. Sometimes those resources are available at colleges or universities, sometimes with a 1 or 2 person consulting shop, sometimes it's with a major regional consulting.
With that said, how do you qualify these people? Or do they come to you? Well, you're a connector, so you probably do a lot of research.
Correct.
To determine who would be helpful
Exactly.
to your 1,400
That's right.
manufacturers.
And we only, don't get me wrong.
And you've been around 30 years, so the information comes to you eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
not
we're,
you, but-
well, we're
Yeah.
known. We're known to be,
Yeah.
technical problem solvers. We're not out, doing chamber-like,
Events,
networking
yeah.
events.
Yeah.
We're just not. We're born and bred to solve problems out on the shop floor and with leadership development and new product development. and
Before
things
we
like
get
that.
to the topic that you're kindly going to offer in the way of advice, one more thing about your group organizationally. How do you guys get funded? How does that work?
Great question. It's a 3-pronged approach. 1/3 of our funds come from U.S. Department of Commerce through the NIST program.
Okay.
A second area is the Economic Development Department of Pennsylvania. And the third is self-generated revenues through training and consulting.
Okay, so you're not fundraisers, but you have a menu and folks can come to you, and each of these services
Yep.
might have a fee
Yep.
or a nominal fee.
Exactly.
And it's not like you're going to the bank and making a profit, but you certainly need to cover expenses.
Exactly.
Right.
And there are one-off grant programs that we gain from both state and federal means. And for example, we're under a new grant program. It's a 3-year long program called the Advanced Manufacturing Technology Program. And not only do we connect manufacturers with solutions and expert consultants, but we might underwrite by $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, whatever it takes, to get a job and project initiated. And some of those grant programs that we work under kind of accelerate a manufacturer's consideration to adopt those solutions.
But at the same time, they now understand that this is available. And then the
Yeah.
topic at hand, you offer education along with that.
Yeah, we do a lot of forums, a lot of seminars. We partner with our consultants. We've done robotics forums. We've done
Oh, really?
automation,
Okay.
visual inspection systems. We've done cybersecurity, best practices forums. So we're coupling our outreach and our training along with our project implementation services.
We're talking with Gerry Schneggenburger, the Chief Operating Officer for the Northwest Industrial Resource Center here in Erie, Pennsylvania, and of course all across a lot of Pennsylvania, to the other side of Du Bois, so to speak.
Yeah.
Over the hill.
Over the hill. Yes.
And there's a lot of stuff out there. Your territory, you do a good job serving it, but you have a outrageously large territory.
Yeah, it's the biggest in the state of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
You know, we
Oh,
have a sister
yeah.
organization down in Pittsburgh, another in Philadelphia, and other places in Pennsylvania, but our footprint is the largest.
Well, it would make sense to have them in urban areas, but boy, you're pretty well spread out.
Yeah.
And hence
Forest
you have-
County, little Forest County. Who knew?
Who would know?
That there's manufacturing in Forest County. but
More
there
than
is.
what people understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some good things going on all across Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And rural America has a good work ethic, doesn't it? In Pennsylvania, I hear it does.
We're known for that. So not only did you bring up the powder metal, but we're known for tool and die development.
Yes.
We're known for plastics, injection molding.
How do you make plastic parts? You need the
Yeah.
tool and die industry.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. The big three are the plastics, the tool and die, and then the powder. But there's a little area known as carbon development.
Really?
Carbon fiber, carbon composites, yeah.
And this is more recent, if I can
Well,
recall.
20 years, 10 years, yeah.
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 Well, just think at one time, and now I'm showing my age, the back of television was fiberboard.
Oh, yeah.
And now
Yeah.
you pick up a television, what is it? It's a
Oh, my
giant
God.
piece of plastic
Yeah.
casing with some glass in it.
Yeah.
So the world has changed. Now, as you go along and you're out helping these people, they probably put requests into you for things that would be helpful to their companies. And we've talked about technology, and one of the big things, and we were talking about turning off our phones here, everybody's involved in some aspect of having computer technology. Boy, even saying the word computer seems archaic, right? Networks, server, the whole ball of wax. The point being is that you do a lot of work helping people with their cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Did I hear that right?
Yeah.
Okay. How does that all work? How did you guys get into that?
Well, let's see. It's part of our charter. So, like we were talking about, we started out with lean and continuous improvement and Six Sigma and those things that were quality oriented back in the 1980s. And somewhere along the line, we morphed into MRP and ERP systems and servers and networks.
Before it goes too far, some of us know what that is, but MRP.
Oh, material resource planning and
Okay,
enterprise
thank you.
resource planning.
All
Yeah,
right.
it's
Yeah, that
great
makes
big
sense
software systems,
Yeah.
Oracle and SAP and Great Plains and all these.
And these are
other
common
programs.
words in American vernacular now. SAP,
Yeah.
Oracle. Maybe people don't really understand how that all works
Yeah.
because your just-in-time stuff is not just physical anymore.
Oh, yeah,
Putting
it's
the
digital.
boxes on the truck.
Yeah.
It's digital. And in your tours of all these companies you work with, everything's integrated? Would every machine on the floor be integrated? Obviously, their servers are there, their desktop machines are there.
Yeah. So
Do people integrate? Are they that integrated?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Okay.
So it depends on the firm, depends on what the needs are. If you're doing, annealing or some type of quenching of metals or stuff like that, you still need an ERP. I find most of our manufacturers do that.
Yeah.
But then you get into the very high-end electronics where there's fabrication of plastic parts with aluminum pressed metal parts with integrated circuits and integrated circuit boards, and that's where you really get.
And those are, if you've ever walked
know.
through some of these, I call them wholesalers, but they're shops that sell machines.
Yeah.
You don't see people.
No.
Well, you do,
No.
but
And those are the types of operations that really get integrated. So there's some organizations, if they're working on really big block steel, you may not have a lot of system integration.
Like
but
the
if you have
brass casting places and things like
no,
that.
yeah, that's right. And so if you have a lot of CNC routing and machining, milling, and then you're putting in like an integrated circuit board with a plastic cover. That requires a lot of systems integration. So that's where the need is. But to answer the question, the genesis of the cyber need, when you think about, there's this term called Industry 4.0. McKinsey and the big consulting companies are pushing sort of this idea of the digitization of manufacturing, included additive manufacturing, where you print parts.
Oh boy, don't get me started. My son bought a machine.
I
that
do.
prints
I do
parts.
this.
We were getting there, weren't we?
It's like fishing. I could throw that out there, and I knew you were going to bite at it.
Yeah. Thank you.
But additive manufacturing is just one of the 9 technologies in Industry 4.0, right? And so there's augmented reality, there's virtual reality, there's systems integration, there's additive printing and manufacturing. I can't remember a few of the other ones. But they all have a digital platform. And when you think about cybersecurity, which is one of the 9, cybersecurity is a foundational or a baseline technology that enables all that stuff to happen securely. You can't have automation and the Internet of Things down on the shop floor without having cybersecurity.
And then it goes elsewhere so people can monitor it.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
actually order from it.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, we're just touching. So what do you folks do with that? Do you go and assess a plant, or do you
questions.
just
Well, you
advise people?
That's you threw out Tom.
I just wrecked your presentation.
No, you did. You threw out a concept. You said, "Well, do your clients come to you for this or that?"
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
What do they come
and typically, they come to us for things that we're known for when their employees want to be trained, and that's probably about 30% of our work.
Okay.
The majority of our work is to go in to talk with the presidents or the vice presidents or the directors and sort of identify their frustrational needs or their operational needs and be able to pivot into one of the 9 Industry 4.0 areas. So, for example, if they're struggling with work in process at a couple of manufacturing cells is getting bigger, we will go in and problem solve and say, geez, you may want to do a value stream mapping program, and you may want to develop some digital requirements so that your ERP or your MRP system, your software systems, are reporting when things get exceptionally large. And so we can start developing solutions. So the key is sometimes there are these frustrations or bottlenecks that manufacturers have, and we're like psychologists. We trip over them, and then we throw out some ideas, and they may gravitate towards one or two of the ideas.
Or the person doesn't even know that he's graduated to that level.
Correct.
And there are solutions.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. Well, that could be complicated. So you have to do a lot of assessment then?
We do a lot of we have gotten very good at getting right to the chase. We're not there to do a 2 or 3 hour survey process. We're there to dialogue with a operation for about 30 to 60 minutes. We're not.
Okay.
It's not an overly exhaustive process, but our people are applied, and they know the technology spaces pretty well, and they start making inferential and referential solutions for consideration. Then we bring our partners in to develop like scopes and proposals.
Well, what kind of mistakes have you seen? What kind of
boy.
problems have you seen?
boy.
Here we go. Here's the fun story, right?
I can't mention names.
No, don't
I
mention
will not.
names.
I will not mention names. No,
No,
I'm teasing. But cybersecurity is a big one.
Well, you would
it's-
think in the
it's
21st century everybody's doors would be locked, but that's not true, is it?
the elephant in the room.
Is it?
Oh, it's awful. We had a regional breach here at our operation. One of the services.
Not yours, but someone you were helping.
No, unfortunately ours.
You got invaded as well?
Yeah, it was slight. We contained it.
Yeah.
And we've learned from it. There are these things called keyloggers where a hacker can go in and record your keystrokes and then send those keystrokes, and they can recreate your passwords and user logins. So we've recreated the situation, but we're not certain. The bottom line is the cyber area is just rife with
So if someone's interconnected all over his plant, let's just say even if his office and his accounting software, his ordering software, and this gets in there.
Yeah. This is, okay, so let me tell you exactly what happened. We send an invoice to a client, and on that invoice is a please pay, the Northwest IRC, and we have a city and state of Pysz Street in Erie, Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And somewhere in the Ethernet, somebody puts a stamp saying, please pay this routing number. It's a bank routing number. And when
on
it gets
your invoice,
on the invoice, so in the internet, somewhere along the line, somebody recorded or got a hold of our PDF, tweaked it, put an illegal or insecure or fraudulent routing number on it, and it was received by one of our clients. And we've learned from that, but those are the things that happen. We had another client.
Makes you think you should have mailed it. Although the mail can be stolen.
I just saw this statistic: 27% of all cyber breaches are done with paper.
You mean stolen information?
Stolen
from paper.
via paper.
Well, it's like the copy machine; it scans everything.
Yeah. So I don't know how we become safe.
Yeah.
We have a postage machine that was hacked into.
They got into because it's integrated with your office, your printer, and everything else.
With our systems, our local network, and it's a worldwide phenom where hackers tried to get your credits for the U.S. postal system.
Are these domestic folks or foreign folks? It doesn't matter? Or?
Well,
I don't know.
Okay, in the former example, the PDF that was intercepted and a stamp.
Oh, a PDF was intercepted.
Yeah, electronically.
Oh,
that was foreign. We traced the servers to Belgium and I believe Holland.
Really?
Yeah.
European hackers.
Yeah.
Well, gosh knows where they are.
Yeah.
And if you go farther east than, farther east than Belgium, there's a whole group of people there. Yeah.
Thugs. And then in the latter case, where somebody got into a network, that could be done anywhere. Our foreign adversaries are hacking into these mail servers and
so your outline for this is you help people understand how this happens and what they can do.
Remediation.
Yeah. So you have a whole course?
Well, prevention is number one. So you'll see a few newsletter articles every year from us telling you as a user or a systems user or manager how to prevent cyber attacks and cyber threats.
What about remediation? Do you help with fixing the problem?
Oh, yeah.
And this goes down to a person's laptop at home where they're doing business or a
correct
50-person
could be a server.
Shop?
Yep.
Just a server.
Yep.
Oh, that's right.
Could be a server. And one of the best ways to the two best ways. I this is not scientific, but I do a lot of reading. Number one area that we focus on in some of our writing and literature is password security.
Yes.
You have to have strong passwords, make them long, make them convoluted. According to the Department of Justice, you don't have to change them every 60 days.
You know what they're
change
doing.
them once a year, 2 years.
The passwords on your email now and your laptop saves.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I had 48 passwords saved there because it's just aggravating to type in a 20-character password with 6 exclamation points, 2 question marks.
Well, in one cyber breach that I'm cognizant of, out on the dark web, there are hacked systems like Yahoo, LinkedIn, Expedient, Capital One. They were all stolen. The usernames, passwords, and probably Social Security, maybe even account numbers. And so I could go out onto the dark web and look for your information. If you're a Yahoo or LinkedIn user, I could probably find your username and password. It probably would cost me about $1 or $2 to do that. And then if I knew you were doing banking with a local bank, for example, I could try your username and password on that bank and see if I could get it.
Sure, because people don't change passwords per account.
You're supposed to.
Rule 1.
They're supposed to.
Don't have one password.
No,
Gerry,
that covers all your
Gerry
accounts.
at WQLN.
No.
Exclamation point,
No.
just to be safe. Right?
Yeah. I should have my, it's called Passport. That's my WQLN password. It should not be the same one that I'm using for my Vanguard investments.
Well, my password is "you can have it all!" Exclamation point.
Because I have none.
I have nothing. It's all yours. But we're laughing, but it's not funny because you probably have experienced some of these problems with your clients, or they're very cognizant of this, or you've made them cognizant of this, and you're helping them out.
It's brutal.
Brutal. Good word.
It's brutal.
It's not funny, though.
I've
It's not
seen
funny.
Office 365 accounts pop up on day one, by the hackers, especially
You
abroad.
mean day one of having it installed?
Well,
Or whatever.
follow the logic.
Yeah.
And then on day three, that Office 365 account has been mothballed because on day 1 or 2, they've done something nefarious or fraudulent. For example, let's say your domain address was WQLN.org, for example, right? And
Everybody knows.
let's say I want to spoof your organization and ask Erie Insurance, for example. They seem like they have deep pockets. I'm not saying they do, but if they were, I could nefariously say my name is Tom Pysz at WQIN .org. I would put one letter off. Instead of putting the L, I would put it an I, and most people would never see that. I could create an Office 365 account that had the preface of WQIN.org, and I could take the name of Tom Pysz, send it over to Erie Insurance and say, listen, you guys have been great in times past. I really need $1 million for our radio station, and then they wire that money, and then within a day or two, they've totally mothballed their Office 365 account, and they've gotten rid of the domain WQIN.
Yeah, totally gone.
And so we've just experienced that within the last couple months.
So you offer prevention, you offer some logical solutions, and some, of course, somewhere along the line, this has to be solved universally, logistically.
Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah,
it's a war. When they talk about a war, people don't realize there are billions and hundreds of billions of dollars being lost.
It's interesting because Google, as you know, is a wonderful company, and just read the history of Google. Go back to the founders. And that's not implicating or insinuating anything, but knowledge is, what I'm getting at is knowledge is universal.
Yeah.
It just doesn't belong to the United States alone.
No.
And there's some places in the world you'd be surprised that are very adept.
Yeah.
You mentioned Belgium, Eastern.
Yeah.
Now we can go to Eastern Europe, and worse yet, Africa and China.
Yep.
And Malaysia.
So
as well.
one of the tactics we recently did on our server is to block all traffic to those places.
You geographically isolate
Yeah,
yourself.
it's called geofencing.
Really?
Yeah, within your sonic wall or whatever firewall you're using. I got some raised eyebrow from our ISP service provider, who, we've never seen this before. You want to block Sudan? Why would anybody want to block Sudan? I'm like, well, I don't have any clients over in Sudan. We do work in our 13 counties.
Yeah, what do I need an email from? The example you gave me was, Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. And so I got some funny looks. Apparently, the systems engineers that fielded my request, why doesn't Schneggenburger and Northwest IRC? Why don't they want traffic
they need to hire
North
you as
Korea?
a consultant.
Yeah.
But
you can limit where
you can go.
your internet traffic is coming.
Well, and we could go on to what happens with your cell phone, which is also an internet device. Well, unfortunately, we're going to invite you to. Fortunately, we're going to invite you to come back. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, and this has been most fascinating. I hope people now have a better understanding of the Northwest Industrial Resource Center. Gerry Schneggenburger here, Chief Operating Officer. Regards to all your staff. Thank you for being here, and we're gonna have you back and do a part 2 if that's okay.
Yeah,
love to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you for being here.